criticism that we hear from the left side of the political spectrum about the Democratic Party is that we don't fight hard enough, that we are insufficiently committed to the cause. There's one tiny little piece of that I have some sympathy for, which I'll get to at the end, but I think by and large that is misplaced. And it really is an excuse to explain why Democrats don't succeed in elections or why we're not able to pass policies, when the real reason is because a lot of the policies that are being forced upon us by the left side of the political coalition are unpopular and difficult to pass. So they don't want to deal with that. They want to try to imagine a world where if we had just tried harder, and even in some instances when the policies are good and they fail, the instinct of the left side of the political coalition is to blame Democrats. And that's really not the way it played out. And I'll give you a couple of examples. When we tried to pass the Build Back Better plan, an excellent progressive agenda that would have provided greater child care, greater access to education and health care, lower drug prices, a whole host of things, in exchange for raising taxes on the rich and wealthy corporations. Great policy. Passed the House, failed by 2 votes in the Senate. The reaction from the political left was to blame Democrats for that failure because we hadn't fought hard enough. That simply wasn't true. 99% of Democrats in the House and Senate supported that bill. 100% of Republicans opposed it. So to blame Democrats when it fails is to just give the Republicans a pass and to make it harder to elect the necessary few more Democrats that would get us there. Now, we had Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, 2 Democrats who did not support it. And the suggestion was, well, if Democrats should have forced them to support it somehow. I saw a person who shall remain nameless on a podcast, actually I'll name him, Hassan Piker, was saying that, well, we should have gone after Joe Manchin for his ethics problems. We should have used the IRS, we should have used the government on him. And okay, I guess the question I have is, and that would have made Joe Manchin vote for the bill because? It wouldn't have. Or if we had somehow forced Joe Manchin to resign, the Republican governor of West Virginia would have appointed someone who then would have supported the Build Back Better plan. That just doesn't really make sense. And also, we had the instance of the Supreme Court appointments. Again, the criticism of the left is Democrats didn't fight hard enough. We didn't fight hard enough for Merrick Garland, and we didn't fight hard enough to stop Amy Coney Barrett. Well, the problem there is the Republicans had the votes. They had the votes to not bring up Merrick Garland and to force through Amy Coney Barrett. So I think those sorts of criticisms where Republicans push forward bad policies, and instead of being blamed for that, instead of we Democrats being able to say, hey, this is why you need to vote for Democrats. Build Back Better, it's a positive plan, Democrats are for it, Republicans are against it, we attack ourselves for not having done the impossible. And the myth out there is that Republicans never back down. They never do that. Well, they wanted to repeal Obamacare. They didn't. You know why? Because they didn't have the votes. Okay, it wasn't because of a lack of courage or conviction. They didn't have the votes. I think we need to be more practical about that. Donald Trump backed off of a national abortion ban. He's claimed that he's not going to cut Social Security and Medicare. I don't believe him, but he made the claim, which was a compromise with what a lot of conservatives would have wanted him to do. So it can't always just be if we don't get our way, it's just because we weren't willing to break enough furniture to get there. Now, I do have one little piece of this that I do agree with. I think sometimes Democrats, when you come to them and say, hey, we want to do this, and our instinct is, ooh, that's going to be really difficult. And the instinct is to come up with process reasons why we can't do that. I think we need to be bolder and say, all right, what do you got? How do we get there? How do we get creative to get to solutions? But when we push those solutions, blaming Democrats for failing to get there because somehow we haven't forced Republicans to vote in a different way, undermines the ability of us to build a strong coalition and get support for progressive values. We got to find a way to work better together on those issues.